Hello everyone, and great to see you again at another Oxygen XML live experience. My name is Alim Belu, and as usual, I will be your host for today's live webinar, the conclusion to the Transforming XML and HTML documents to PDF using CSS, Part 4, Advanced Functionalities. Now, to set this event up, let's take a quick trip down to memory lane. We started this journey by learning the basic CSS layout, and then we continued with more complex elements such as lists, tables, images, and the global page layout. This happened all during the first three parts. And by knowing everything I mentioned previously, we can consider ourselves ready to tackle PDF publishing on our own. And now, for the grand finale, Julian Lecour, software developer at Synchrosoft, brings us his latest tutorial explaining how CSS can become our best asset when styling a production-ready PDF output. And I'm excited knowing that we all can level up after today's webinar, and I hope that you are too. Now, before Julian starts his presentation, let me recap the useful information that you need to know when it comes to the Oxygen Live events. As always, all of our events are being recorded, so today's event makes no difference. After the webinar comes to an end, the recording will be made available on the event page on our site oxygenxml.com, along with the slides and samples of Julian's presentation, and also the recording will be uploaded on our YouTube channel titled Oxygen XML. Another important aspect is that as we go along, we always encourage you to ask us questions by using the questions panel from the GoToWebinar interface. You can find it in the right. And Dan Capriuara, senior software developer at Synchrosoft, will assist us by answering all of your questions in real time. So with this being said, let's invite to the stage Julian Lecour. Hi, Julian. How are you?
Hi, Aline. Hi, everyone. I'm well, thank you. I hope everyone is well too. And let's go for this final webinar about XML and HTML transformation to PDF using CSS. So for today's webinar, let's take a look first at our agenda. Today we will learn more about hyphenation, PDF bookmarks and metadata, how to extract text using CSS functions, how to create dynamic links, and how to add change bars to our content. So before we start, as usual, I have some few questions for you. The first one will be, as usual, what is your level of CSS? I'd like to know if my courses, I hope my courses helps you level up in your CSS level. So I hope you're ready for the first question. I think we can stop for now. Everyone approximately has voted. I'm glad to see that we have a few people knowing about to use functions. So maybe for them, it will be like a small reminder. For the other ones, don't worry. They are not so advanced functions, so we will learn them really easily and you can reuse them really quickly. Another question I want to ask you today is what kind of document types you are usually using for your PDFs? Okay, so the majority of you seems to use the XML, maybe other XML special grammar like S1000D maybe, or DocBook. A few of you use this data, so this webinar is not directly related to data, but don't worry, there is another series of webinars dealing about data and CSS. And for the HTML part, this can be used too, as you will see that my examples are in HTML, but they work also for the XML part. And finally, the last question for today will be that if, or have you ever used maybe XPath? Okay, so it seems that the majority of you knows it and even knows how to use it using a few queries, which is fine. You will see that I will use some small functions too, but I will detail each of them and explain what is the scope of each function I am using. So now, before we start, as for the previous webinar, I will use the book Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne. The text and the images are extracted from the project Gutenberg, which is available at the link I gave you. And as I will show you here, so here is the document, the HTML document. I already take a little refactoring operations to remove the default CSS gave by the Gutenberg's website in a separate style sheet to make it easier to read. And as you maybe previously seen on the other webinars, I've already created this style sheet, which is the content for the third webinar. I also created a style sheet containing some small correction, but they are not really interesting for this webinar. There are some defaults, or I removed some contents. And today we will use this new style sheet, which will contain some advanced functions. So now let's dive in directly into our today's agenda. So first we will learn what is hyphenation. So the hyphenation is the way to separate words into syllables in order to make them fit inside a whole line of text. The words that will end the text line will be cut using hyphen, and the scope of the hyphenation will be to create some equals line, because I think everybody of you has already seen a lot of books in their lives, and you will see that normally the books are really standardized and use the same kind of spaces. So if somehow a word cannot be contained by a single line, it will be cut and will contain a hyphen to explain that the word is in fact cut between two lines. So in our case, the chemistry processor supports two types of hyphenation: the manual hyphenation or the automatic hyphenation. The first one is based by the use of the hyphen or shy hyphen character. The only difference between them is that the shy character is not displayed on the content, but exists in your XML source. The second one, the hyphenation dictionary, is based as the automatic, is based on what is called an hyphenation dictionary, which is a full file containing a lot of rules for a lot of words for a given language. And I will detail them on the next slides. They are based for PDF chemistry on the text typesetting systems, which is a way to write some patterns. And as I mentioned, so they relies really heavily on those hyphenation dictionaries. So the result of this hyphenation, if I go back to my final result, Some of you maybe will recognize the book from the previous webinar. The difference is that you will see that I already activated the hyphenation on this one, and you will see that, for example, on the first paragraph, the word singulier is splitted between two lines, but is splitting by syllables. So the first syllable is here and the rest of the word is here. Of course, we can find a similar example for the English text. For example, continental, for continental, splitted as for the first one by syllables and splitted on two different lines. So the advantage of this is that even if the word is wrapped between two lines, if I take it and copy it everywhere on any kind of text editor, the hyphen will not be displayed. I'm sorry. So the hyphen will not appear on the copied content. But of course, we can ask ourselves how the rules are defined for these words to say why the word is splitted here and not maybe on the first syllable or on the third one, etc., etc. So first, let's see how to use the hyphenation. In CSS, it's really simple. You just need to use the CSS hyphens property and to define the value or on either manual or auto. In this case, we will use automatic, so we want the dictionaries. You will find more information about this property in this link I put on the slide, and you will see that here in my style sheet, I already activate the hyphenation on automatic. So how does the hyphenation dictionary work? First, they are really based on the language used by the document. In my example, I'm using French and English, as I shown you before. So in fact, it's simply based on the lang or XML lang attributes displayed on XML elements. So based on that, the processor will automatically load the corresponding dictionary and applies the specific patterns. So these dictionaries are .heap files, so they are compiled dictionaries, and these dictionaries are compiled from XML sources, which are already included in Oxygen PDF chemistry configuration. So while we keep both XML and heap files like this, you can see how the patterns are defined in XML. The patterns I'm talking about are in fact defined as following. There are some characters, they contain one or more digits between 0 and 9, and they can have one or two dots. And the scope of these patterns is to create hyphenation points inside words to help the processor wrap them between lines. So as I told before, so the pattern is a set of characters that are matched. So the processor matched them against the words. And the dots that can be set on the patterns are used to mark the starting of a word or the ending of a word. And every time a word is matched using one of these patterns, the created substring will be assigned a digit between 0 and 9, which will be the hyphenation point. And in case of pattern conflict, because you can have multiple patterns matching the same word or a piece of word, the highest digit value will be assigned as the hyphenation point. And the only rule which apply on the digits is that if the digit is an odd value, the hyphenation will be allowed for this point. If there is an even value, the hyphenation is not allowed on the same point. So let me show you a small example now. We will go back on our book, and I took an example I have here in my French sentence, which is the word désert, which is desert in English, you will see that the word is splitted after the first syllable. How does this rule work? So first of all, we are using the French hyphenation dictionary because the book is mostly in French, and the desert word. Okay, so now I have two patterns that you may see below that are matching this word. The first one matches only a part of the word, and the second one matches exactly my word. So my word, so it's a start of a word containing de and an s. And the second one is exactly for the word désert. So what is the difference? You will see that here we have a conflict and we have multiple digits. So what the processor will assign, it will assign the bigger digits. So the 3 will be applied between the first syllable and the S, and another digit will be applied between the S and the last syllable, which means that here the processor cannot split the word. So this is why, because of these 3 here, the hyphenation point is applied exactly on this location, and the word is split exactly on this point. So this is how hyphenation works. Now let's continue further to our advanced functionalities and start with the PDF bookmarks. So what is a PDF bookmark in PDF? It's an additional way of navigating which can be used in parallel with the table of contents. In our case, if you are using HTML documents, it's automatically generated, and it can be, obviously it can be customized from the CSS. So how to customize bookmarks? We can use a set of dedicated properties, which are these 4, which is the level, the label of the bookmark, the state of the bookmark, and the target of the bookmark. In my example, I will use only the first 2, which I think are the most common used, which is the level. It's a digit, the value will be a digit, and the label, which obviously will be the label of the bookmark, which is a text. The target will be the target of the bookmark, and the state is only a value between open and closed. It in fact sets the default value of the bookmarks if you want them to be closed or open. Of course, you can combine those properties with all kind of function like content, counter, or the attribute function. And I put a little more documentation with this link directly. So let's go to my style sheet. Back in my style sheet, you will see from here to here, I defined multiple rules for my bookmarks. So let's begin by this one. So the first thing I did is that I remove 2 types of bookmarks, which I do not want them to appear in my final output, which is the first level of heading and the third level of heading. So simply I remove them using the unset value for the bookmark level. So that means there are no more included in the bookmark tree. Then what I did is that I set for my second level heading, which in my document corresponds to each chapter title, I simply defined a counter, which is set and reset on the body. You will notice that it's really important to reset at the beginning of the document, and you have to make sure that on the body, you do not reset other counters, because if you reset other counters, this rule will overrule the previous one, and you will have only this counter resetted. So don't remind and don't forget to add, if you have any other counter, don't forget to add them to the rule. In my case, it's not the case. I have only one counter, so I created it at the first level. And I simply increment it on each chapter, so on each level 2 heading, except for the table of content because I want a specific treatment for it. So by default, the rule is set for each level of heading corresponds to its level. So H2 are by default set on level 2. As in my example, the chapters are on level 2, but I don't want the first level, I will simply move them to the first level. So they will be the first level of bookmark in my PDF will be the chapters. And I simply create a small label which include the text chapitre, which is chapter in English, and a counter, which is my specific counter in upper Roman to look like the default value displayed here. And the different process I wanted for the table of content is that I still want the table of content to be on the first level, but the title that the table of content has, the second heading, is already the text I want. So I will simply use the content function to explain to my style sheet. You just have to get the content of the node and copy it to my final output. And this is the result I will obtain. So for each chapter, I will have the text chapter and the counter I am currently using. And for the table of contents, I will have exactly the content of the tag, the H2 tag corresponding to the table of contents. And this is how you can easily, using a few rules, setting custom bookmarks. So now let's continue with PDF metadata. What is the PDF metadata? In fact, there are additional information about the document, the current document. This information can be of two types: dynamic information that we collect from the document, or we can create static information, which we simply specify in the CSS style sheet. As for other rules, they are automatically created from the HTML meta tags. I will detail this in a few slides. They are usually used by external tools, for example, for filtering the content or indexing the content, and it can be used also by search engines as keywords, for example, to if you search a word in particular, the search engine will return you the given PDF document. So how to define PDF metadata in CSS? You can use the set of Oxygen custom properties, which are going from the author to the keywords or the description and the title. Of course, as for the bookmarks, you can combine them without any issues with the content, for example, or the attribute property functions. Sorry. So, sorry. Let me show you for the first of all. No, let's continue. I'm sorry for this part. I want to do some dynamic metadata, and I want to use a function that will extract pieces of text from my content and set it directly in my CSS properties. So for that, I will use a function, a specific Oxygen function, which is called Oxy XPath. This specific function supports all the XPath 2.0 functions, and you can apply it either on at page rules, or you can set it on classic selectors that I will use on my example, only classic selectors. The advantage of this method is that you can use the XPath builder on the document, so the XPath builder which is here, or you can go to the XPath builder view on the input document, either on text mode, preferably to make it easy to check. And don't forget, when you are using XPath, that all your XPath must be optimized, because if an XPath is not optimized, it can cause performance issue when the transformation will be done by chemistry. It's really important to have the smaller or the best XPath that the query goes exactly on one node or on two specific nodes and not scan all the documents for a given content. So in my example, I have only dynamic metadata, and I want to extract it automatically, as I explained, from the meta node. And the rule that is automatically applied is that if the HTML document includes the keywords metadata, all its content, all the content of the content attribute will be used as keywords in my PDF document. But this is not like magic. It's in fact behind the hood. It's a default style sheet from Oxygen, which is the default HTML style sheet, which is used by all the HTML document and all the HTML5 documents, because in Oxygen, all the HTML frameworks extends the XHTML framework. So this is why this rule will be applied in any type of HTML document, including mine. And the rule is this simple, is that if a meta node contains the attribute name keywords, simply set the meta keywords. So set all the keywords in the PDF using the content of the attribute content. And in my output document, you will see that automatically my keywords field is full of information, which is exactly the information from my meta node, which is this one. The other one, dynamic information I will extract it from the title of my document. So I will go back to my document, and I simply want to extract from my document the information which is in fact in my header that the site provides me, which is the title node, including that name of the book, which is here, and the author. And for that, I will simply use the Oxy XPath function. And how the Oxy XPath function, in my case, I will use 3 different functions, but we will read them from the last one to the first one to make it easy to read. In fact, the first thing I did on my node is to cut the text. I want the text, this method, in fact, the substring after it means that I want to get the text, the result of the text, so all the node, but starting after the word off. So all this part will be removed by the first function. Then the second function will be applied on the result of the first one. So after the first function, I obtain the title of the document, comma, the author. I still want the author to be removed in my case because I only want the title. So I will do the same using another function which will cut the what remains from my document starting by the comma. So I will cut this part. And at the end, I usually recommend the usage of the normalize space function, which simply will remove all the extra spaces that can exist in this node. And the output will simply be the title of my document. And you will see that after I did that, I simply copy my XPath into the title specific property, and I did the same for the author. The only difference is that the author XPath is a little more simpler. I simply cut the text after before the by character. So I only want, if I go back to my PDF, to my slides, I only want this content. And of course, in my final output, you will check that the title is my first extraction and the author is the second one. So I'm sure that my rules are applied correctly. Now we can continue on our journey to advanced functions by generating dynamic links. So what does the generation of dynamic links means? In fact, behind, I just want to use a CSS function, which is called target counter, which gets a given counter value for a given URL. And the only rule for this function is that the URL target must be inside the document, of course. You want to just point to a location from inside the document. So in my example, I set up on this case. So if I go back to my book, in fact, where I am, I want to select this element, which is inside a link, an HTML link, and I want to override the default value, which is directly written in the text. So this is why I take this class and this element, and I want to override those rules by a dynamic output, because my output, as I customize it differently from the original document, the page number does not match my page number. So what I simply have to do is to use as a new content to override this previous content, the target counter function. I will indicate the target URL and the counter name I want to use. So the page counter, which is the default counter used to number the page, for example, in the bottom part of each page. And automatically the processor will go back into the HTML document, search for the given href, so the original reference of my chapter, see that there is an anchor going inside my document and going to the given heading, which has the correct matching ID, as we want an ID using the sharp sign, and taking the page number which matches the location of this header and setting back as the output of this process. So for example, on my chapter 10, the original page number is 42, as you may see here. But in my table of content, the 10th chapter is on page 57, sorry. And if I give a click on my link, you will see that the link matches the correct page and I reach the exact page, so it's corrected. I also did the same for all the images. As you may see here, all the images, some of the images in my document contains some reference to text in the book. And I had the same problem, for example, in the third paragraph. You will see an extract from another page, which is in fact in page 18. But it was not the page 18 on the original document, but I corrected it like this. If tomorrow or in 1 year I want to publish my document in another format, and so my page numbering will be altered, my links will always reach their destination. And this is the main advantage of using dynamic links. Finally, you maybe want to display some modifications in your documents, for example, between two versions, or you want to see to show corrections to the reader and show them using maybe an underlining or maybe another color. but usually people want to display them using change bars. The change bars are small bars displayed in the margin of my document, and exactly on the location of an element. In my case, in my example, I will use the insertion element, which has been used by the author of the Gutenberg website to mark all the correction they did in the text between the text, the original text from the book editor, which may contain some printing mistakes, and the correction they did in their final web version. And so they use the insertion HTML tag to mark those changed occurrences in their document. And to make this work, you have to create some new change bars. So in my case, to create a change bar, I have to use Oxygen new custom pseudo element, which is called change bar, in combination with this list of custom properties, which allow me to set an offset, which is the distance in the margin between the margin and the text of my change bar. The placement of my change bar, I maybe want them on the right margin or on the left margin. The style will be applied on my change bar, which usually is the same as the borders. So you can find a dotted style or a solid style, for example. You can also set a custom color and a custom width. In my example, this is why in my example, I overwrote the default insertion border, because the default HTML document contains some border bottom under these insertions. And I simply replace those borders by a small change bar. And the result in my document is the following, that my document contains some modification, and all the modification that my document contains. So if there is an insertion there, if I go to the original content, I will see that this document has been modified here. And if I go back to my original source, I will see that they inserted a correction. The original content of the correction was this one, and the corrected text is the correct name of the character, which is Ralph and not Ralph, which has been a typo here. And I marked those modification using a gray change bar. Of course, I could put a black change bar or a red change bar, or I can also use any kind of dotted change bar if I want to use dotted. Any kind of different modification, they will be reflected into my output. As usual, if you want to dive again in those webinars and you want more documentation, you can reach them using these additional links. The first three are about the XPath functions I used in this webinar. And of course, a list of links on our user guide to all the topics that we are dealing with today. So I hope you enjoyed this final webinar about XML and HTML, and I hope you will join. For those who like to do the same in data, you will reach the other webinar series about data, document, and PDF using CSS. Thank you for being with me today. And if you have any questions, I'm ready.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you for your presentation. And also, let's thank the people for attending another Oxygen Live event. And with this being said, let's jump to the questions panel and see what we have there. First question, and until now the only question addressed to you. How do you get correct hyphenation when the content uses more than one language? And as an example, English and Spanish have words that are spelled the same but hyphenate differently.
Oh, it's simple as I mentioned before. So let me show you, for example, in my case, I only have English and French, but don't worry, it's the same even if you're using Spanish or any other language. If I go back to my continental word here, so let's open them in parallel. So here I have the word here. So this is the original text, and this is the tag, the matching tag. And as you will see in this case, it's indicated at the beginning of the element, the containing element, that the language of this node of this tag is different than the default language, which is at the beginning of my document, which is French. And automatically the processor will load, for this case, the matching dictionary, which in this case is the English one. So if I was in Spanish, I think it's SP, and told that this will be the Spanish a Spanish example, the processor will load for this particular tag the Spanish dictionary in order to split the content. So this is how the difference is made. In fact, they are loaded using the language set on the node. This is what I think it is in one of my first examples here, saying that the dictionaries are based, on the lang attribute or the XML lang attribute.
Thank you, Julian. We have another question regarding the hyphenation. Could you please recap the hyphenation rules and the calculation?
Sure. So let's get back to our slides. All the dictionaries are based on the text type settings, which is a set of patterns. And for each of them, once you've activated the hyphenation, the automatic hyphenation, like for example, using on the body, the hyphens auto selector and property, you will reach the matching dictionary, for my example, the French one. And the dictionary contains a set of patterns like those two. And those patterns will be applied on the whole text. And each time a word or a part of a word is matched, the pattern will assign a digit 2, 3, 2, 1, 0, 9, for example, between those characters as an invisible rule, which is the hyphenation, what we call the hyphenation point. So this simply means that in these digits, we will set a rule saying that we can break or not a given word. And in case multiple rules or patterns match the same piece of word, the highest value will be assigned. And of course, odd values means hyphenation is allowed. Even values means hyphenation is not allowed. So back to my case, the dessert word, I have two rules. The rule starting by dots, so it means that the word must start with this syllable. Then as I have a conflict, I will put the bigger value, so the 3, meaning that this point can be used for a word wrapping. Then I will continue as nothing to do. And here my rule will insert another hyphenation point, which is a 2, meaning that I cannot, it's impossible for my processor to cut this word at this location. And it could be the same for the continental word, for example. I do not have the rule directly in my example, but if I go back to chemistry installation, for example, if I had, I don't think I have one, but it will be the same if I load the English hyphenation dictionary, which I think I can open here to show you. So the hyphenation dictionary looks like this. You have them each person having oxygen and chemistry have them. So we will take the non-compiled source. You will see that I have compiled dictionary and non-compiled dictionary, as I explained. So I will take the non-compiled dictionary for showing examples. And you will see, for example, you can have exceptions. So those words are not taken in account by the hyphenation processor. So I cannot split those words. And for the continental, I think I will have to search for maybe this rule. And search within all the rules for a rule matching, for example, setting, not in this case, but there is surely a rule saying that I cannot split the word here, but I can here, because there is a rule, for example, between TI and something. Let's search maybe TI at the start of a document, maybe TI and 3. But you will see that those rules does not have dot at the beginning. So this means that these patterns can match anything inside a word. So I don't remember which is the rule for this one. Maybe there is at this point with the nantal, having nantal. No. No. Maybe I have something back to TI 5, for example. So bad I cannot find the correct rule, but you will see that with this full list of rules, one must match the TI or maybe only an I, and saying that after an I in English you can split a word. But I'm not sure I can put and find something like this. Idle. So close. But this is how it works. All the rules are usually here, and if a word is splitted into the document when you are using automatic split and automatic hyphen, it means that they must be a rule matching this.
Thank you, Julian, for explaining everything again and for making it much clearer. As for the next question, is there an exclude list for hyphenation, say for programming function names or product names, to be not hyphenated?
Yeah, I think I answered this indirectly with when I opened this document. Yeah, there is a list at the beginning of each hyphenation dictionary. There is a list of exception that can be completed. The only difference is that when you complete these list, you have to indicate to PDF chemistry or to, if you're using data documents, you have to set up a new dictionary and says to chemistry that he has to use this custom dictionary. There is a full topic about this in our documentation about hyphenation dictionaries. And you have here a whole topic about how to install new hyphenation dictionaries, and in fact you can reuse them into the config hyphenation dictionary where they are all listed. You just need to compile the new dictionary into a .heap file, or you can use command parameters. We have a specific parameters for hyphenation dictionary, which is this one. You can also indicate if you are using Oxygen PDF Chemistry by command line. You can use this parameter to move the default configuration folder, to your custom dictionary folder. And in this case, you can keep the non-compiled form. The processor will compile them automatically before using them. So you can maybe this. I think this is the best. This is what we recommend for the users. If, for example, to start from these documents, copy them on another folder, then after refer this folder directly into the command line.
Okay, thank you. And for the following question, an audience member asks us this: how can I display abbreviation or deletion in a text? Can I use something similar to the change bar pseudo element?
I think this really depends on the type of how do you insert. In fact, you can customize the elements as you want. So if I go back to my error, sorry, it was double quoted. Here they are already using some custom HTML nodes, and in fact you can, as CSS is really easy to customize, you can customize these directly, and maybe you can create anything that matches the insertion element, and saying that instead of the change bars, you can maybe saying that the insertion maybe having before, you can show, for example, the I think the text was the title, if I remember. Yeah, you can show, for example, you can show a content element saying that I want to show the title attribute, and saying, okay, so before each modification I will show an attribute. Maybe I want them to be as it's the old one, I want it to be to have a line. I think it's maybe not line through, sorry. So for example, you can use this, and if I transform back my document and go back to this, you can customize. And instead of using the change bar, you can keep the insert element and maybe put another color, or I don't know what you have in mind at this moment for showing the content. The only difference is that if you want the deleted content, you will maybe need to use this kind of things. But as you have the original content in the document, the idea is you must have the content you want to display. This is the only condition, in fact. So as you have this condition, you can do whatever you want after that. So if it was another element, I don't want a change bar anymore, and I just want to have a color blue saying that it's a new insertion, or maybe I want to bold my text. So let's say that I want a text that is font weight, so I want a bolded text. I can still convert my document, generate a new one, and I will have my change bar, and I will have a blue insertion and a strike through in my deleted content. But the only condition, I cannot really recommend something, but you can use whatever you want. You just need the content in the source document. So if I go back to my here, you will see that the before, I need to put another color if I don't want them to be colored the same. For example, this is a red colored up, and I will have blue bolded and red bolded line through element. but this is exactly as you wish. It's exactly what you prefer. There is no specific rules for this, and you will see that the output will look like this once it will be done. I hope I answered your question. You've seen the output, the red deleted content, the blue one, and the change bar, for example. And it takes me 2 minutes to make this.
Well, thank you, Julian. I think that we just went through all of our audience's questions. And thank you, everyone, for showing your involvement by asking Julian anything that might have come up regarding the topics presented. And also thank you, Julian and Dan, for providing us with the answers to our audience's questions. I will quickly take back control now. All right. And let me tell you that if you still have questions or you have any comments regarding Julian's presentation, I encourage you to go to the event page on our website, oxygenxml.com, and you can write to us directly by using the Oxygen feedback commenting platform found at the bottom of this very same page. And also let me remind you that the event is being recorded, and you will find the recording along with Julian's sample files and slides on this very same event page. And as always, we encourage you to take a look at our events page, where you can also find the links to register for free to all of our future events. And if we have another webinar coming up, it will certainly show up there. Now, reaching the end of our event, let me thank again Julian for the information that he shared with us, so we can also become unstoppable PDF publishing machines like he is. And also a big thank you.
Thank you.
No problem. But it's the truth, the truth. And a big thank you to Dan Capriora for helping us with the audience's questions in real time. And of course, I am incredibly grateful to all of you for joining us again on this on today's Oxygen Live event. And until next time, stay safe. This is the most important thing. And taking in consideration your respective time zones, have a nice day or evening. Bye bye.
Bye.